I was sitting at my kitchen table on a Tuesday morning in March when I first saw the photographs. Not in person, not from someone who cared enough to tell me face to face. I saw them on Instagram, posted by my cousin Emma, whose life I'd always supported. The captions were celebratory, gold and ivory, a cathedral downtown, a reception at Riverside Manor, the most exclusive venue in the city, 300 guests, an orchestra, a 7-tier cake that cost more than my monthly rent. And there, in every single frame, was my brother Michael in a tailored tuxedo, his arm linked with his bride, Jessica. Jessica, who'd been a stranger to me 2 years ago. Jessica, who'd smiled sweetly at family dinners while slowly erasing me from everything that mattered. And Michael, my own blood, looking happier than I'd ever seen him. The problem wasn't the wedding. The problem was what I knew, what I'd just discovered, what would destroy everything. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I'd learned that lesson already. I closed the Instagram tab and opened my banking app instead. I stared at my account balance, $847.33. I opened my email and found the notification I'd been expecting. The wire transfer had gone through 2 weeks ago, $250,000. Gone. That money was supposed to be mine. I'd earned every penny of it. Now it was paying for ivory napkins and a champagne tower and a honeymoon in the Maldives. My name isn't in the story the media eventually told. They called it the scandal. They called it financial crime. They called it family betrayal. But what they should have called it was justice. Not the kind you find in a courtroom, though that came too. The kind you build yourself, brick by brick, while everyone around you is too busy lying to notice what you're doing. This is how I took back my life. Before Jessica, I'd been someone else entirely. Someone who believed in blood and loyalty and the assumption that family would never deliberately hurt you. I was wrong about so many things. I grew up in a house where my mother always said money didn't matter, but she was always checking her purse. My father said honesty was everything, but he had 3 different phones. And my brother Michael, 5 years older than me, he said I was his best friend in the world. He said it on my 18th birthday. He said it when he borrowed $15,000 from me for his first business venture. He said it every time he needed something. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm 32 years old. I have a master's degree in finance. I spent the last 12 years working in corporate auditing, which means I was trained to find things that don't add up. Patterns, discrepancies, the small lies that eventually become big ones. It's ironic, really, that I was so good at spotting fraud in other people's businesses, but completely blind to it in my own family. I'd left my corporate job 3 years ago. I'd taken my severance, $270,000, and my savings, and I'd started my own consulting firm. It was small at first. Just me in a rented office helping mid-sized companies clean up their financial records. It grew quickly. Within 2 years, I had 6 employees and a client list that included 3 Fortune 500 companies. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined. Real money. Life-changing money. I was also the family bank. My mother needed help with her mortgage one month. I transferred $5,000. My father's business hit a rough patch. I gave him a line of credit and never asked him to repay it. My youngest sister Emma wanted to go back to school. I paid for her MBA. Michael, of course, needed money constantly. Money for his marriage counseling, which failed anyway. Money for his new apartment after the divorce. Money for his consulting startup, which never actually launched. And I gave it all willingly. Happily, even, because I loved him. Because that's what you do for family. Because I had it and he needed it, and it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I should have been paying attention. Jessica entered our family in the fall of 2021. She was beautiful in the way that makes you immediately uncomfortable, the kind of beauty that seems designed specifically to make other women doubt themselves. She had red hair, pale skin, and the smile of someone who'd spent years perfecting exactly how much warmth to show without committing to anything. She met Michael at a networking event. He was absolutely captivated. I remember the first family dinner she attended. She wore a black dress that probably cost $1,000 and seemed genuinely interested in my work. She asked me questions about my business. She laughed at my jokes. She even complimented my apartment when Michael invited everyone over. I thought she was wonderful. I thought Michael had finally found someone who understood him. I was such an idiot. What I didn't see was the way she watched me, the way her eyes calculated the cost of things in my home, the way she touched Michael's arm and whispered something, and then he'd ask me about my clients, my revenue, my investment portfolio. I didn't see it because I wasn't looking for betrayal. Betrayal requires looking. In the spring of 2022, Michael got engaged. He asked me to be in the wedding party, and I said yes immediately. I was thrilled. I picked a dress. I started planning a bachelorette party. And then, in June, exactly 3 months before the wedding, Michael sat down across from me at a coffee shop near my office and told me he needed to talk about something serious. "It's about the wedding," he said. He was stirring his latte, not looking at me. That should have been my first sign. "Of course," I said. "What do you need?" "We've decided to scale back the guest list," he said. "The venue changed. We're doing something smaller and more intimate now. Invitation only, very exclusive." I remember the exact moment my stomach twisted, not because of what he said, but because of how he said it, like he'd rehearsed it, like he was delivering a line. "That sounds nice," I said carefully. "When do I get my invitation?" Michael stirred his latte again. Then he looked up at me and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Calculation, fear, guilt, all mixed together. "That's the thing," he said. "Jessica's family they have some traditions about who should be in the wedding party, and they're being pretty specific about the structure. So we've decided, Jessica and I have decided, to have no siblings in the wedding, just the immediate family and Jessica's people. It's nothing personal. It's just what makes sense for the vibe she wants." I set down my coffee cup very slowly. I was aware of every small movement, like I was watching myself from outside my body. That's what shock does. It fractures you into pieces. "You're saying I'm not invited," I said. "You're invited to the reception, just not the ceremony, and not the wedding party. Look, I know it's weird, but Jessica's really particular about." "How much money do you need?" I asked. "What?" He looked genuinely confused. "You need money, from me. That's why you're really here. You're softening me up before you ask." Michael set down his own cup. He reached across the table like he was going to take my hand, and I pulled away. "Sarah, that's not fair. This isn't about money." "Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like it's entirely about money. Jessica wants a wedding that costs more than most people's houses. You don't have that kind of money, but I do." "We have savings," he started. "How much savings?" I asked. "Because I'm looking at my bank statements and I've given you $80,000 in the last 3 years. For your apartment, your business, your credit card bills. You don't have savings. You have me." Michael's face hardened. I'd seen him angry before, but never at me. His anger at me, directed at me, felt like a betrayal so complete I couldn't even measure it. "You know what? I don't appreciate the insinuation that I'm using you. That's insulting. And frankly, that attitude is exactly why Jessica didn't want you in the wedding party. She said you'd make it weird. She said you'd turn everything into a thing about you." That's the moment I should have walked away. That's the moment I should have said no to everything. But instead, I sat there and listened as my brother told me that the person he was marrying thought I was selfish. And I apologized. I actually apologized for being insulted. "I'm sorry," I said. "I understand, it's your wedding. Do what you need to do." "Thank you," Michael said, relief flooding his face. "And honestly, we do need a little financial help, just to cover some of the final costs. Jessica's family is contributing and my in-laws are helping, but there's still a gap. 25,000, I know it's a lot, but we'd pay you back. Within a year, tops." I gave him the money. He didn't pay me back. I told myself I was fine with not being invited to the ceremony. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that family meant doing things for them even when they hurt you, and that was the whole point of being family. I was very good at lying to myself. What I wasn't prepared for was the public humiliation, because somehow, magically, everyone in my social circle knew I hadn't been invited. Colleagues who had been invited came up to me with that particular kind of fake sympathy that feels like a knife. "Oh, I saw you weren't in the wedding party. That must have been disappointing." They didn't phrase it as a question. They phrased it as an observation. They wanted to see how I'd handle it. I handled it by smiling and saying it was no big deal, which made me look pathetic. I handled it by forcing myself to go to the reception alone, in a dress I'd bought specifically to make sure I looked perfect, because if I looked perfect, maybe no one would know how much it had hurt to not be there. I arrived at Riverside Manor at 7 o'clock in the evening. The ceremony had already been held. I'd missed it. The guests were already halfway through cocktails and appetizers, and Michael was already halfway through his marriage. I saw him before he saw me. He was standing with Jessica, his arm around her waist, and she was laughing at something someone had said. He looked happy. Not the kind of happiness that comes from being with the person you love, but the kind that comes from finally being the person you thought you could be. He looked like he'd become the version of himself that Jessica had always been telling him he could be. He didn't look like my brother anymore. When he saw me, his expression shifted. For a second, I saw something genuine in his face, concern, maybe, or guilt. Then Jessica leaned up and whispered something in his ear, and the concern vanished. He smiled at me. It was the smile you'd give to an acquaintance. Professional, cold. "Sarah, you made it." He hugged me briefly, the kind of hug that's over before it starts. "Jessica, this is my sister I told you about." Jessica turned to me with that perfect smile, and up close in that moment, I saw exactly what she was. I saw every calculated gesture, every rehearsed emotion, every moment of manipulation. I should have seen it from the beginning. Maybe I did, and I just didn't want to believe it. "Sarah, Michael has told me so much about you. Come, I want you to meet everyone." She took my arm with a grip that was strong enough to be controlling, and she guided me through the reception like I was her new acquisition. What happened next was subtle, but I was paying attention. I was always paying attention. Every time I tried to talk to someone about my work, Jessica would interrupt with a story about her job at the real estate firm. Every time I mentioned something I'd done, Michael would say something like, "Yeah, but wait until you hear about Jessica's portfolio." They'd positioned themselves at the center of every conversation, and they'd made sure that when people looked at me, what they saw was not a successful businesswoman. What they saw was the woman Michael's wife had to tolerate. I left early. I told Michael I wasn't feeling well, which was technically true. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. I felt like I'd funded my own irrelevance. In the car on the way home, I received a text message from my mother. "Did you have a nice time? Michael looked so happy. Jessica is such a good influence on him." I didn't respond. The money situation became clear 3 months later when Michael asked to borrow another $50,000. This time, he didn't ask in person. He texted me, just like that. A text message. "Hey, quick question. Could you help me out with some renovations on the new house? Jessica wants to redo the kitchen. Just $50K. We're good for it, just temporary cash flow issue." I was sitting in my office when I read it. I was in the middle of a meeting with a client, but I excused myself and went into my private office and just stared at that text for 5 minutes. Then I called him. "I'm not giving you another penny," I said. "What, Sarah, come on." "No, I've given you nearly $200,000. I've given you my time. I've given you my presence at every family event, every dinner, every moment when you needed someone to show up for you. And in return, you excluded me from your wedding. You let your wife, Michael, make me look like an outsider in my own family. So no, I'm not giving you any more money." There was silence on the other end. "You know what? This is exactly why Jessica didn't want you in the wedding party," he said finally. "She knew you'd hold it over our heads. She said you were the type of person who keeps score. I'm the type of person who notices when she's being used. And I'm done. I'm done with all of it." I hung up the phone. That's when Jessica started the campaign. It was subtle at first. A comment on my Instagram about how some people spend their whole lives working instead of actually living. A text to my mother saying she was worried about my emotional well-being and suggesting that my depression might be affecting my relationships. A call to my sister suggesting that maybe I was angry about money because I was jealous about Michael being happy. And Michael, instead of defending me, went along with it. He told my mother that I was bitter. He told my father that I was using money as a way to control people. He told the entire family that I'd essentially given them an ultimatum: get on my side, or I'd cut them off financially. Which, of course, made them choose his side. My mother stopped calling. My father stopped answering my texts. Emma started using my money for her education while simultaneously refusing to take my side in what she called the family drama. And no one asked me what had actually happened. No one asked me what I was feeling. No one cared that I'd been deliberately excluded and humiliated. They just cared that I wasn't funding Michael's new kitchen anymore. What they didn't understand was that this was fine. This was better, actually. Because being cut off gave me something I didn't have before. It gave me clarity. And clarity, I was learning, was the most dangerous thing in the world. It was Emma who accidentally gave me the first piece of the puzzle. We were having coffee in January. She'd reached out to me, supposedly wanting to make peace, and she mentioned something about Michael's business. A consulting venture, she said, that was really taking off. He'd already made back his initial investment twice over. They were talking about buying a second property. Jessica had been given a partnership at her real estate firm. "That's wonderful," I said, and I meant it. I also meant to go home that night and investigate. My financial auditing background isn't just a job. It's a way of thinking. It's learning how to follow money like a bloodhound follows a scent. Where does it come from? Where does it go? Who benefits? Who loses? I started with public records. I looked up Michael's business license, his tax filings, the property records for his new house. Everything seemed legitimate on the surface, but there were gaps. Small ones. The kind that wouldn't matter to anyone but an auditor. His business had been launched with a $100,000 injection of capital. The source was listed as private investor loan. There was no investor name. I dug deeper. I called the bank that held the business account. I told them I was Michael's financial advisor and needed to verify some information. It was a lie, but a small one, and it got me access to the account history. The $100,000 had come from a transfer, from another account. A business account listed under both Michael's name and Jessica's name, and that account had received its funds from something called Capital Plus Financial Services. I'd never heard of Capital Plus Financial Services. Neither had the state business database. Neither had the Better Business Bureau. It was listed at a P.O. box in a strip mall in the industrial district. That's when I started to truly understand what had happened. I broke into Jessica's professional profile on LinkedIn and photographed the details. I looked at the corporate filings for her real estate firm. I found the partnership documents, dated exactly 3 months before she joined the company. And there, in the investment section, was a deposit of $50,000 from an LLC called Chen Capital Holdings. Chen, my last name. I sat very still at my desk and watched the pieces click together. Jessica hadn't just wanted my money, she'd stolen it. Or rather, she'd convinced Michael to help her steal it. The $150,000 I'd given him over 3 years. He'd funneled it through shell companies and used it to create the fiction that Jessica was a successful businesswoman with her own capital, that he was a successful businessman with his own consultancy, that they were a power couple who had made it on their own. Except they hadn't made it on their own. They'd made it on me. I sat in my office for 6 hours that night and didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there and let the anger calcify inside me until it turned into something sharp and cold and useful. And then I started to plan. The first thing I did was open a notebook. Not digital. I didn't trust digital. I got a physical notebook from the office supply store down the street and I started writing down everything I knew. Every transfer, every date, every lie, every manipulation. I developed a timeline. I drew diagrams. I created a map of how the money had moved and what it had become. The second thing I did was hire a lawyer. His name was Richard Sanderson, and he specialized in financial crimes. I went to his office in a business park downtown, and I paid him a $10,000 retainer, which I knew was going to hurt my bank account. But this was the point where I understood that some things cost more than money. "Tell me what happened," he said. He was older, maybe 60, and he had the expression of someone who'd heard many versions of this story. I told him. I showed him my timeline. I showed him the documents I'd photographed. I showed him the shell company structures. I showed him how the stolen money had been laundered through fake business investments. "This is good," he said when I was done. He was making notes. "You've done most of the legwork for me. The question is, what do you want to do?" "I want them prosecuted," I said. "That's criminal law. That's a police matter. I can help you file a report, but I specialize in civil litigation. I can help you get your money back. I can help you document this for a lawsuit." "I want both," I said. "I want the criminal charges, and I want to sue them, and I want everyone to know what they did." Richard Sanderson smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who understood exactly how much this was going to hurt the people I was about to destroy. "Let's do it," he said. But I wasn't done yet. The next month was about preparation. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I didn't confide in my family. I didn't reach out to Michael and give him a chance to explain or apologize or beg. I just gathered evidence with the same methodology I used in my professional auditing work. I documented everything. I got copies of bank statements. I filed Freedom of Information requests. I hired a forensic accountant to trace the money flows through the shell companies. I also did something else. I set up a new email address, completely separate from my personal one. I created a detailed spreadsheet of every dollar Michael had ever asked for and every dollar I'd given him. I calculated compound interest. If I'd invested that money instead of giving it away, I would have had nearly $500,000 by now. I printed it out and I put it in a folder marked evidence. But the most important thing I did was start recording. I reached out to Michael. I told him I'd been thinking about our argument and I wanted to talk. I told him I missed him. I told him I was sorry for being so harsh about the money. I asked if we could get lunch. He said yes. Of course he said yes. He probably thought I was ready to give him more money. He probably thought I'd realized I was the problem. We met at a restaurant downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early and set up my phone on the table. It looked like I was just checking messages. I started the recording app. When Michael arrived, I was already smiling. "Hey," I said. "I'm glad you agreed to meet. I wanted to talk about the house renovations." "Sarah, I appreciate this," Michael said. "Jessica said I should have handled it better, but we're in a tight spot." "I know you are," I said, and this is where I started asking careful questions, auditor questions, questions designed to extract information. "Tell me about the business. How's the consulting firm doing?" "Really well," Michael said. He was relaxing now, getting more comfortable. "Actually better than expected. Jessica's been helping with the business development side, and we've picked up some good contracts." "That must have required significant startup capital," I said. "About $100K, Michael said, "but we had an investor who believed in the concept." "Who's the investor?" I asked. Michael hesitated for just a moment. I saw him calculate whether to lie or tell the truth. "It's a private arrangement," he said. "They prefer to stay anonymous." "That's interesting," I said, and I was still smiling. "Because I was looking at your business filings, and they list the funding as coming from an LLC, Capital Plus Financial Services." Michael's face went pale. "Sarah, and that LLC appears to be a shell company, because there's no actual person behind it. There's no actual business. What there is a transfer of funds that I gave you for emergencies, that I gave you because you were my brother and I loved you." "It's not like that," Michael said. He was panicking now. His voice was getting higher. "The money, it's not stolen. I'm going to pay you back. I just needed time to get the business profitable." "How much of that money is yours, Michael? How much of Jessica's partnership at the real estate firm is actually yours? How much of your success is actually real?" He didn't answer. He just sat there and I watched him understand that I knew everything. "If you tell anyone about this," he said finally, and his voice was quiet now, almost a whisper, I will destroy you. Jessica will destroy you. Do you understand? We have the resources." "No, you don't," I said. "You have my resources, and I'm taking them back." I reached over and stopped the recording on my phone. Michael watched me do it. "You recorded this," he said. "Yes." "You can't use that. It's illegal." "Actually, in this state, it's legal for me to record a conversation I'm a party to. And I just recorded you admitting to financial fraud. So yes, I can use it." Michael stood up. He looked around to see if anyone was watching. They weren't, but I could see that he didn't care any more about public appearances. He was just panicking. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want my money back," I said. $250,000, plus interest and legal fees. I want you to admit what you did. I want Jessica to face consequences." "I can't do that. Jessica would." "Jessica would what, leave you? Face charges? Yes, exactly, that's the point." Michael sat back down. He put his head in his hands. "If you do this, the family will never forgive you," he said. "The family already didn't forgive me," I said. "The only difference is that now I actually deserve it." The police investigation took 6 weeks. It was thorough, because I'd given them everything they needed to be thorough. The detective assigned to the case, a woman named Maria Santos, was actually impressed by my documentation. "Do you always keep records like this?" she asked. "I'm an auditor," I said. "Keeping records is what I do." The charges were filed in March. Financial fraud, money laundering through shell companies, securities fraud. Jessica was charged as a co-conspirator. Michael was charged as the primary perpetrator because legally he was the one who'd received the money in trust and diverted it. The district attorney was confident about prosecution. The evidence was overwhelming. But I didn't just want criminal charges. I wanted my money back. So while the criminal case was proceeding, Richard Sanderson filed a civil suit on my behalf. This is where the story gets interesting, because civil court is very different from criminal court. In civil court, I didn't have to prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt. I just had to prove that it was more likely than not that I was right. And I was absolutely, completely right. Michael tried to settle. He offered to pay me back $50,000 and called it even. I refused. Jessica tried to claim that the money had been a gift, which contradicted everything Michael had told the detective, and actually made her look worse. Their lawyers filed motion after motion to suppress evidence or delay proceedings, and Richard Sanderson defeated them all. By June, I'd won the civil case. The judgment was for $375,000, all the money I'd given Michael, plus interest, plus legal fees, plus punitive damages. Michael was ordered to pay me in installments. Jessica was ordered to liquidate some of her business assets to contribute to the judgment. The house they'd bought. The bank foreclosed on it because Michael couldn't pay the mortgage if he was paying me. The car Jessica had purchased, it got repossessed. The partnership that Jessica was so proud of, she had to disclose the financial fraud during the discovery process, and when her real estate firm found out, they fired her. It turned out they don't love employees who commit crimes. And Michael, my brother, who'd lied to me and used me and tried to ruin me, he eventually pled guilty to the financial fraud charges. He got 2 years of probation and community service. He also lost his business license and couldn't work in consulting. He had to get a job at a tech company as a data analyst, which paid maybe a quarter of what his fake consulting business had supposedly made. But the criminal case was always just the backdrop. The real story was what happened in the public sphere. Because here's the thing about the internet. Information travels faster than shame, but shame travels eventually. And when it does, it travels everywhere. One of my colleagues, a woman named Catherine who'd always been cool to me at work, reached out to me after the civil judgment. She said she wanted to talk about what had happened. I met with her, not sure what to expect. "I know you don't know this," Catherine said, "but your family has been telling people in our industry that you're unstable, that you're bitter about your brother's success, that you've been harassing him for money." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Where did you hear this?" I asked. Jessica's been calling people, other real estate agents, colleagues, people in the network. She's been positioning this narrative where you're the villain. She's been saying you set him up because you were jealous of his happiness. So you believed her? I asked. At first, yeah, Catherine said. But then I saw the police records, and I called around, and I found out from other people that you're actually a really solid auditor, that you do good work. And it occurred to me that if you were really unstable, you probably wouldn't be able to do what you do. What did you do? I asked. I told people the truth, about the fraud, about what you'd actually done, and I've encouraged other people to do the same. That's how the narrative shifted. Not through my own efforts, but through other people recognizing that the truth was more compelling than the lie Jessica had been selling. Within a month, everyone in my professional circle knew what had happened. They knew that Michael and Jessica had committed fraud. They knew that I hadn't set them up. I'd caught them red-handed. And they knew that Jessica had then tried to smear me to cover up what they'd done. Jessica tried to fight back. She gave an interview to a local news station, claiming that I'd manipulated the police investigation and forged documents. The problem was that I had hired a forensic document examiner who authenticated every single piece of evidence, and when the news station looked into her claims, they found nothing to support them. So instead, they reported on the fraud. The story made the local news. Local woman uncovers brother's multi-year fraud scheme. It wasn't sensational or dramatic, it was just journalism, but it was effective, and once the local news reported it, other outlets picked it up. Regional news, then national news. The narrative was auditor sister takes down family fraud ring, and it was flattering to me because it was accurate. My business actually grew after that. Clients wanted to hire me because I was known as someone who could find fraud. Companies wanted me to audit their books because they knew I was thorough and honest. The publicity was terrible for Michael and Jessica and wonderful for me, and yes, there was some satisfaction in that. But the real victory came in September, 6 months after I'd first discovered the fraud. I got a phone call from my mother. It was the first time I'd heard her voice in 8 months. "I need to talk to you," she said. She was crying. We met at the same coffee shop where Michael had told me I wasn't invited to his wedding. My mother looked like she'd aged 5 years in the time since I'd last seen her. My father came too, which surprised me. "We owe you an apology," my mother said. She said it very formally, like she'd rehearsed it. "Michael lied to us, Jessica lied to us, and we believed them instead of you." "Yes," I said. I wasn't going to make it easy. "We let them convince us that you were the problem, that you were being selfish and vindictive, and we chose his side, and we were wrong." I waited. "We want to make it right," my father said. "We don't know how, but we want to try." "You believe me now?" I asked. "Yes," my mother said. "We read all the documents, we understood what they did, and we're ashamed that we didn't support you." I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt like I'd won. But what I actually felt was sad. Sad that it had taken losing their son to bankruptcy and probation for them to see the truth. Sad that they'd ever believed his lies in the first place. Sad that family loyalty had been so easily overridden by Jessica's narrative and my brother's desperation. "I need some time," I said. "I'm not ready to just go back to how things were." "We understand," my father said. "I'm angry," I told them. "I'm angry at all of you. I'm angry that I had to destroy my own brother to get you to believe me. I'm angry that Jessica hurt me and then tried to destroy me, and you went along with it. I'm angry that money, my money that I worked for, that I earned, was used to exclude me from my own family's events." My mother was crying harder now. My father put his arm around her. "I'm not going to pretend that's okay," I said. "I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen, but maybe, eventually, we can figure out what comes next." That's all I could promise them. Jessica moved away in October. Her family had some connections in another state, and she'd managed to get a job at another real estate firm. No one was surprised that she wanted to leave. What surprised everyone was that Michael didn't go with her. Instead, Michael asked if we could talk, just the two of us. I was hesitant, but I agreed. We met at a park near my apartment. We sat on a bench and watched people walking their dogs, and Michael started talking. "I know I can't fix this," he said. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to make it right." "Okay," I said, non-committal. "I'm going to pay you back every penny of the judgment. Even after that, I'm going to keep paying you back until I've repaid everything, the original money plus interest, like I should have done from the beginning. It's going to take me years, maybe a decade, but I'm going to do it." "You don't have to," I said, and I meant it. He could have declared bankruptcy. The law would have protected him. "I know I don't have to, but I want to, because maybe if I do, someday you might forgive me." "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said. "I know, but I hope someday you will." We sat in silence for a while. "Jessica manipulated me," Michael said. "I'm not trying to blame her entirely. I made my own choices. But she was the one who told me that you were a problem. She was the one who convinced me that it was okay to use the money. She was the one who said that you didn't deserve to be in the wedding because you were controlling and bitter. I listened because I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that someone that beautiful and successful had fallen in love with me, and I was willing to do whatever it took to keep her." "She was never in love with you," I said. "I know that now, but then I needed to believe it." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and I saw someone who was fundamentally broken in a way that wasn't really my responsibility to fix. He'd made his choices. He'd made them for his own reasons, and those reasons weren't my fault. "I need you to understand something," I said to him. "When I discovered what you'd done, I had options. I could have confronted you privately. I could have asked you to repay me quietly. I could have just cut you out of my life without going to the police. But I chose to expose you because you didn't leave me a choice. You didn't just lie to me. You excluded me. You humiliated me. You made me feel small in front of everyone I cared about, so I made sure everyone knew the truth about you." "I know," Michael said, "and I deserved it." "Yes," I said, "you did." We didn't hug, we didn't reconcile, but we started talking again, slowly, carefully, with the understanding that trust isn't something that just comes back. It has to be rebuilt, and that takes time. Whether Michael and I would ever have that kind of relationship again, I didn't know. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't. What I knew was that I wasn't waiting around for his redemption. I was moving on. A year after I'd filed the civil suit, I was invited to a speaking engagement at a women's business conference. The topic was navigating betrayal in business and family. I almost said no. I was tired of the whole story. I was tired of being the woman whose brother stole from her. I was tired of being defined by other people's crimes. But then I thought about all the women who probably experienced exactly what I had and just accepted it. Who thought family loyalty meant allowing themselves to be stolen from. Who thought betrayal was something they just had to endure. So I said yes. The room was full, 200 women, maybe more, and I told them the entire story, not the sensationalized version that the news had reported, the full, complicated, painful version. I told them about loving my brother so much that I couldn't see his theft. I told them about trusting a sister-in-law so thoroughly that I didn't question her motives. I told them about the humiliation of being excluded from my own family's events. I told them about the months of planning and gathering evidence and building the case against people I loved. And I told them the part that mattered, that I'd done it anyway. "What I want you to understand," I told them, "is that protecting yourself isn't selfish. That setting boundaries isn't cruel. That holding people accountable, even people you love, isn't a betrayal. It's justice. And sometimes the people who care about you most are the ones who'll hurt you worst because they know exactly how. They know what matters to you. They know what would devastate you. And they use that knowledge." When I finished, a woman approached me. She was older, maybe in her 60s, and she was crying. "My daughter did something similar to me," she said. "She convinced my husband that I was the problem. They went through my savings. I didn't know how to fight back, so I just accepted it. I wish I'd had your strength." "It's not too late," I told her. "You can get a lawyer, you can fight back, you can take back what's yours." She hugged me, and I realized that the point of all of this, the investigation, the prosecution, the civil suit, the public exposure, wasn't really about revenge. It was about proving that there was an alternative to acceptance, that you could stand up for yourself, that you could win. 2 years after the civil judgment, I received the final payment from Michael. He'd made good on his promise. He'd paid back every penny of the judgment, plus he'd voluntarily paid back the original amount he'd borrowed, with interest calculated to what he would have owed if he'd approached the loan professionally from the start. I deposited the check, $50,000, and I was officially made whole. Not made whole in the sense that none of it had happened. The betrayal had happened. The fraud had happened. The humiliation had happened. But made whole in the sense that I'd taken back what was mine, and I'd made sure that the people who'd wronged me understood the cost of what they'd done. Jessica had remarried in another state. She was, as far as I could tell, trying to build a new life and new reputation. I hoped it would be harder for her. I hoped people would look her up and see the fraud charges. I hoped she'd spend the rest of her life explaining what had happened. But I wasn't going to follow up on that. I wasn't going to dedicate any more of my energy to her. She wasn't worth it. Michael had started therapy. He joined a support group for people dealing with financial stress and trauma. He was dadding again, slowly, cautiously. He had a new job at a tech company that paid enough for him to live comfortably, if not luxuriously. He'd realized that the life Jessica had been promising him, the life of wealth and status, wasn't actually possible or desirable for him. He'd had to learn to be okay with being ordinary. And me, I'd built my business into something even more successful than before. I had a waiting list of clients. I'd published a paper on detecting fraud through shell companies. I'd become a recognized expert in my field. I'd been asked to consult with the FBI and the SEC. I'd turned my greatest betrayal into my greatest strength. The last time I saw Michael was at our father's birthday party. We acknowledged each other. We even had a brief conversation about his work. We didn't act like we'd never had a rift. We both knew we had. But we'd arrived at a place where we could exist in the same room without tension or hostility, where the past was acknowledged but not constantly rehashed. As I was leaving, Michael stopped me. "I think about what you did," he said, "and I'm still not sure if it was revenge or justice." "Does it matter?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "For what it's worth," I told him, "I think it was both, and I think I needed both of them to move on." I left the party and I drove home to my apartment, which I'd redecorated, which I'd made entirely my own. I made tea. I sat on my couch, and I thought about the person I'd been when all of this started. That person had believed in loyalty. She'd believed that family was sacred. She'd believed that love meant doing things for people even when they hurt you. That person had been naive. But this person who'd investigated her brother, recorded his confession, prosecuted his crimes, exposed his lies, and rebuilt her life from the ruins, this person wasn't naive anymore. This person was strong. Not strong in the way the internet had portrayed her. Not some vengeful warrior who destroyed her enemies and watched them fall, but strong in a quieter way. Strong in the way that comes from standing up for yourself when it would have been easier to remain silent. Strong in the way that comes from choosing justice over comfort. Strong in the way that comes from looking your own family in the eye and saying no. That's the thing about revenge that nobody tells you. It's not really about the people you're getting revenge on. It's about becoming the kind of person who can't be betrayed anymore. It's about building a version of yourself so solid, so certain, so unshakable, that no one can ever make you small again. That's what I did. That's what I became. And it was worth every moment of pain.